Hello, everybody. Okay, so buckle up. You're probably going to recognize a lot in this, so bear with me. It's a bit of a winding road, and that's on purpose because the world we live in with food is genuinely complex. But I promise you'll see enough familiar signposts along the way to make this meandering walk familiar. So here's a little reminder for those of you from my community. You know the straw breathing. I just talked about it. Make sure that you take that straw breathing moment. It does make a huge difference in calming and centering and grounding yourself. So I want to start with a bit about my own journey. For most of my life, I believed I was broken. I would watch myself walk into the kitchen, open the freezer or the pantry, and grab, and not be able to stop myself. I could see myself doing it, I just couldn't stop it. And every single time, the only explanation I had was that there was something wrong with me. Other people have something I don't. I'm broken. So if this sounds right to you, if this makes sense to you, please put a note in the chat thread if it helps you. That's accompaniment. So if you know what I'm feeling, that watching yourself, that not being able to stop, then you're exactly who I made this for. And before we can go one step further, I want you to hear me. It was never what you think it was. So let me say something to wherever you are right now, and not the city you're in, because you're not all in the same place, and every one of these is welcome here. Maybe you're just following the flippin' plan, doing it technically, but wondering what your life would look like. Maybe you can't stay on it more than 3 or 4 days at a stretch before it falls apart, and you blame yourself every time. Maybe you white knuckled it faithfully for a good long while, and now you simply cannot stomach the thought of going back there. Maybe all you want, underneath everything, is to lose the weight. That's it. All of it. Every last roll. Or maybe you can't hold on to anything that feels like solid ground right now and you just want something, but you're not even sure what. Wherever you are on that list, and I've frankly been everywhere, you're in the right room. Nothing about where you are right now is the problem. It's information. So let's start there. Okay. Almost 10 years ago, someone handed me one simple piece of information. They called it the willpower gap. And what it said was, it's not your fault. It's your beautiful brain doing the best it can to take care of you, the only way it knows how. I cannot tell you what that did for me. It cracked something open in me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the problem. I wasn't the broken one. There was a reason. That one idea, it's not your fault, was a gift I had been waiting my whole life to receive. Not the willpower gap. The I'm not broken. My brain's taking excellent care of me, and the food shone a wonderful light on it. It became the heart of my work in the first chapter of my book, which is right there. The gifts of food dysfunction, because that's what it was, a gift. The reframe that opened the door for me, the reason you go to food isn't weakness or brokenness. It's biological, psychological, social. Real reasons woven all through that had you reaching for the one thing that reliably helped. Biopsychosocial. I love that phrase. Remember it because it's coming back. And here's what that crack of light let me do. The moment I stopped blaming my own character, I could finally go looking for what was actually going on. I started studying other addictions, the brain, how compulsion actually works, and found connection after connection, dot after dot. It just dawned on me. Are we recording? Yes. Oh, sorry, guys. Just had a little panic attack. Lots of things going on up here right now. Apologies. What I found became my life's work. It's this. We reach for food because it works. It's the most powerful, most available solution most of us have ever had. It soothes, it numbs, it fills the gap, it shows up when nothing and no one else does. That's not weakness. That's an astonishingly good tool. And once you understand the real reasons you reach for it, you can finally begin to turn down the noise. That's my work. It's built on solid science and it stands. I have mad props for all of us figuring this thing out so early, solving way, yay us. Brava. But here's why I'm so lit up to be with you today. Because the gift came back around, bigger this time. 10 years ago, I learned it wasn't my fault that I went to food. And just recently, I found out the second half of that gift, and I'm still glowing from it. It was never your fault that you couldn't stick to the rigid plan either. I'm going to say that again. It was never your fault that you couldn't stick to the rigid plan either. I knew this and wrote the whole book on it, but the science exploded for me just a week ago. So think about that for a second. Every time you couldn't hold the lines, every time you were spectacularly on track, and then one deviation and bam, every Monday restart, every 3 good days, then the fall. Every flippin' plan that works so well, and you can't imagine getting back on again. You filed every one of these away as proof you were broken. And what I get to tell you today is it was the opposite. It was information, and it was your biology, your psychology, your whole life telling you the truth. That the thing you were being asked to do was never going to work. Not because you're weak, because it's built wrong. And here's the part that delighted me most. I promise I'll explain all of this. Because it's almost funny once you see it. That very first piece, the willpower gap, the thing that cracked me open 10 years ago, the specific version of it I was handed had already been discredited almost 20 years ago. The researchers found that willpower as a finite resource didn't hold up, and the correction just never got carried through. Now, I'll be honest, there's a flicker of, oh, come on, in me about that nobody followed it where it led. But mostly, I felt set free. Mostly. Because it means the whole case for the rigidity rests on something that isn't even true. Please don't spiral at this point. Please give me some space, and I promise I will give you some strength and some floor. So let me show you how that willpower gap became the justification for the entire rigid framework. The logic went like this. If willpower is a tank that runs dry, then we can't have anything else pulling on it. So you need a rigid plan, bright lines, no decisions, total structure, precisely so it doesn't drain the tiny reserve you supposedly don't have. That was the argument. I'm going to repeat that. If willpower is a tank that runs dry, then we can't have anything else pulling on it. So you need a rigid plan, bright lines, no decisions, total structure, precisely so it doesn't drain the tiny reserve you supposedly don't have. That was the argument. And isn't it freeing to see it laid out? The rigidity was sold as protection for a resource that was running out. And the resource, the way they described it, doesn't exist. So let me be completely clear, because this is the whole thing, and it's good news. Willpower is real, but it was never a fuel tank. Here's what willpower actually is. Your capacity to act in line with what you intend and value. To choose. That's real, and you use it every day. And yes, it's genuinely harder when you're tired, stressed, depleted, flooded, or alone. There's the kernel of truth, and it's true, but that's circumstance pressing on a real capacity. It's not a gauge that empties in 15 minutes and needs refilling. That, the tank, is the folklore. Because here's the wonderful, clarifying thing. There are so many real reasons we reach and can't stop until we can, that feel exactly like willpower running out. And not one of them is a tank running dry. Genuine tiredness and sleep debt. Real physical hunger, a deficit you ran all day. Stress, taking your thinking brain offline. The evening when your body's rhythm and the whole day's load arrive at once. That crushing aloneness that raises the cost of everything. Engineered substances built to override your fullness. Big feelings flooding in with the salve taken away. Your gut chemistry pulling. And the belief itself, I've already blown it. Every one is real. Every one feels like depletion. And every single one has a name and an explanation that isn't, you're broken. Is that a little bit of a relief? I don't know. I'll tell you something easily because there's no shame in it. I found 3 places in my book and a few in my willpower course where I leaned on that old science. And I'm correcting them soon somehow. Maybe second edition coming up. There's 3. I'm so pleased. There's only 3 very small places in my book because excuse me, keeping my own material current is part of the job. It's part of why I do what I do. I want to understand what's going on and I want to be able to relay it to you. The willpower gap was the door I walked through. What I found on the other side is the real thing, and that's the gift I get to hand you today. Can I just name how absurd the old message was? For years, the whole thing basically boiled down to that old Bob Newhart skit. You remember the psychiatrist whose entire therapy has 2 words? You come in with your real, genuine pain, and the advice is just stop it. Just stop eating the thing. Just stop wanting it. Stop it. And we laugh because it's absurd. But sit with the fact that that is genuinely what most of us were handed. Just have more willpower. Just stop. How many people around us say that that's all we need? And then we blamed ourselves when stop it didn't work. Of course it didn't. It was never a stop it problem. And I do like mimicking Bob Newhart. I want to talk to you about the some of the complexity of this particular journey that we're on and some of the beauty as we become more aware. And there is a slide that came in your email this morning. I don't feel like sharing it right now because I'm right in the mood here. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk about these things. But so if it was never a willpower gap that needs protecting, and the answer was never a tighter grip, though it'll take me a few minutes to show you why, then what was it? Let me show you what I found, and I want you to feel how deep this goes because the depth is the whole point. Here's where I'm taking you next. I'm going to widen out and show you the whole landscape. I found 31 distinct opportunities folded into 6 families. I promise I won't take very long on this because I think many of you have already taken that quiz, The Real Reasons We Go to Food. I don't want you to try to memorize them or even try and figure out how to correct them right now. The whole point of this is neuroplasticity and making long-term change. So just let them wash over you and notice which ones feel like home. Before I name them, but let's just be honest about how human this is. We reach for food for reasons that would sound ridiculous if they weren't so completely real. We eat because the day was hard. We also eat because the day was wonderful and we're celebrating. Food's very fair that way. It shows up for both. We eat because it's 3 p.m. and 3 p.m. has a feeling. We eat because someone brought donuts to the meeting and it would be rude not to. And we are nothing if not polite. We eat because we're bored, because we're avoiding one specific email, because the bag was open and we were simply standing there and physics. None of that is gluttony. Every one of those is a real human being reaching for the one thing that was reliably there. It makes perfect sense once you stop laughing long enough to see it. Over years of study, the real reasons we go to food sorted themselves into these families. So, not to diagnose yourself, but the first family, if you can, plug into the chat thread if these make sense to you. If there's something about these that makes sense. The foundation builders is the first one. These were built before you ever had a choice. The comfort food provided for you as a child, maybe even in the womb, because isn't it wonderful that a lot of these substances cross the uterine barrier? Yay. The patterns handed down through your family. The wiring that made food the reward for every good day and the balm for every bad one. You didn't choose these. Came pre-installed. Factory settings shipped with the unit, no say in the matter. This one's a big one because many, many, many of us don't remember the first time we had something to comfort us that was food. The second is the chemistry lab for those of us whose nervous systems feel in everything more intensely. The sensitive ones, the ones told our whole lives we were too much. Food turns the volume down on a world that's too loud. The third is the emotional support specialist. Food became the relationship that was always there, reliable, non-judgmental. So the third is the emotional support specialist, which is a really important one for this call in particular, because I'm going to use it as one of the basic examples. But food became the relationship that was always there, reliable, non-judgmental, didn't need anything back, never too busy for you. Does that make you want to go to eat something? Sorry, I'm not trying to make fun. It's just a thing. It's a thing. It's a gift we have. So food is an incredibly reliable substance, isn't it? And it is non-judgmental. We don't need anything back from it. It's never too busy for you, and it's available at 2 a.m. When reaching for a person felt unsafe or like a burden we didn't want to be. The fourth is the internal advisory board, the exhausting inner committee. And nobody ever scheduled this meeting. It just runs all day, no agenda, no adjournment. The part that wants, the part that forbids, the rebel, the protector, the lacerating inner critic, and the brutal stories we tell ourselves about our worth that feel completely, totally true. We have data, right? We have so much data. The fifth is the external influence network, the world running the show, the couch that somehow means snacks. The couch knows. The stress with the direct hotline to your hand. The smell of something you absolutely had not planned to eat until that exact second. The people pleasing that has you saying yes when your body means no. And the sixth family I've included because I really want you to be aware of how far you've come. These are the awakening observers. These aren't problems, they're bright spots. The part of you that can already tell real food from manufactured not food. Most of you have that one down. The part that's grateful for what you got through and what got you through it. The part quietly noticing your patterns shift as you heal. That's recovery coming online. And if that part's awaken you at all, even a little, you're already further along than you think. Give yourself some credit. Now look at all of that, those six families, layers built in childhood, in your nervous system, in your relationships, in your own mind, in the world around you. That is not a willpower problem. That was never going to be fixed by a rigid diet. And every one of those rigid rules is just waiting to crumble the moment SWCC shows up. Anybody that knows me knows that one. The stuff we can't control, which is pretty much everything, right? And it rears its insistent, noisy head. This is a deep, layered, intelligent system, and food works on every single layer of it. Of course you reached for it. It was the one thing that touched all of it at once. Can you feel a little gratitude for yourself for finding something that worked? Can you do that for me, please? Here's what those six families did for me over years of study. Every single one pointed the same direction, away from rigidity. It wasn't sustainable because SWCC always comes, and no rigid line survives a line that won't hold still. It wasn't even healthy. The stress of holding the line and the daily overriding of your own body costs you something. It costs you something real. And it never once touched the actual reasons underneath. The six families just sat there, untouched, while you fought the food. The deeper I looked, the clearer it got. The answer was never a better cage. It was understanding the reasons and healing them. You can actually heal them. The whole reason I do this work, you don't have to white knuckle against all of that. You get to understand which layer is calling, and then gently, compassionately, you start turning down the noise on the reasons themselves, not the food, the reasons. That's what actually quiets the pull of food. Is this making sense to people? Do you understand the difference here? You getting that we're focusing on the wrong syllable? When we set up this beautiful structure that feels so easy? Here's what I mean concretely. Say it's the aloneness, the 2 a.m. reach. Instead of white knuckling past the kitchen, you notice, oh, now is not the best time to nurture my body with food. I'm actually not hungry. I'm alone. And you reach for the real thing the moment was asking for. a person, those are my Australia friends, a practice, or even just naming it gently to yourself. This is loneliness, not hunger. Loneliness. And the pull toward the food loosens because for once the real need got the real answer. That's the whole move. That in miniature. We don't fight the reach. We answer what's underneath it. We give ourselves what we actually need. I told you I'd come back to one of those families because for so many of us, it just isn't one reason among those six. It's the one sitting underneath all the rest. There's a feeling. A researcher named Sarah Payton, who I adore. So, Sarah Payton, Peyton, she's brilliant. She does a lot of research that really helped me along. The very first thing I heard, very very early on in my recovery journey, was about resonance. But Sarah Payton specifically calls something called alarmed aloneness. I know when I say those two words, I don't need to explain them. Alarmed aloneness. It's not ordinary loneliness. It's the specific crushing aloneness. I almost get teary eyed thinking about it, of going through something hard and having no one who truly gets it. No one's attuned. No one who can be with you in it. Your nervous system reads that particular aloneness as danger. Because for most of human history, alone and unprotected was danger. That's why humans are pack animals. Alone and unprotected was danger. And here's what food did. Food became the relationship that was always there. It didn't judge, it didn't leave, it didn't need anything back. At 2 a.m., when there was no one to call or no one who'd understand, and when reaching for a person felt unsafe or like a burden you didn't want to be, food showed up reliably every time. So when we reach, so much of the time, we're not even reaching for food. We're reaching for company, for comfort, for something to be with us in a moment we couldn't be alone in. That's not gluttony. That's a nervous system doing exactly what it was built to do, reaching for connection and finding the only thing reliably within reach. And here's a cruel twist most people never name. The rigid plan makes the aloneness worse. Sorry. When you're gripping a set of rules and you can't hold them, when you fall short of your own expectations or everyone else's, or else when you do, how many follow their rigid plan and feel so alone with it? You don't reach out, you hide. You feel like the only one who can't do the thing everyone else seems to manage. Please, why can't I be normal? So now you're alone with the failure, on top of alone with the feeling. The rigidity didn't just fail to fix the aloneness, it deepened it. Okay, I'm going to reframe something here. It's my best fun thing is to reframe things. All right. So let me tell you why this matters so much to me. Food is meant to nurture your cells, not your soul. But so many of us have been asking it to feed the soul because it was the only thing reliably there. And once we start tending to the real reason underneath the reach, we can finally give that need the thing it was actually asking for. Instead of handing it food again and hoping that'll do. A lonely heart was never, ever going to be fed from the kitchen. It needed company. A frightened moment didn't need a snack. It needed comfort. When we can name what the need really is, we can finally meet it. And everything gets gentler from there. It's like that orchestra tuning. The first note you hear from I think it's an A from the violin, all of a sudden everything else starts coming online. That's what happens when you start working on this. Let me name why we even do this work at all, because there are two answers tangled together, and it matters to pull them apart. The real one, the one that comes from inside you, is this: to live better, healthier, happier, more vibrantly, to have the energy and the years to be there for the people you love. That one is yours. Hold on to that. But there's a second answer hiding underneath, and most of us have been running on it without noticing because we're supposed to. We're supposed to because it's expected, because somewhere we learned that being good meant being disciplined, being controlled, being a good girl. And here's the hard truth. That second reason is the same voice we'll talk about in a few minutes, that inner critic in a prettier dress. I just flashed on my kindergarten dress where I was twirling around in the right before a first day of class. I was twirling around on the outdoors right outside the school. And somebody called me a whale. I love that dress. Good girl is the good star the rigidity hands you for policing yourself. It feels like virtue. It's actually the leash. So I want to gently separate them. You don't do this to be good. You don't owe anyone your compliance. You do this because your own life is precious and you want it to feel like yours, your life. That's the why. The rest is noise. So while we're here, it's worth seeing why those plans hand you exact amounts in the first place. It isn't because the amount is wisdom. It's because rigidity trained you out of knowing your own enough. You lost the signal. So they sold you a number to stand in for it, but the number was never the answer. Learning to hear your own enough again. That's the answer. No chart can do that for you. Only your body can. So please follow me this because this is very complicated and I'm thankful that you're still here. The numbing, I think we get it backwards. We treat it like the enemy, the thing to be ashamed of. But I want you to hear what it actually was, a gift. One of the greatest gifts food ever gave us because there were feelings too big to hold. Grief we had no support for. Fear with nowhere to go. Loneliness that would have swallowed us. And food, the soothing kind, the eating when we're sad or happy or anything in between. Food could take all of that and tuck it into a corner quietly so we could get through the day, so we could function, so we could survive things we had no other way to survive. So I could find all the real estate and all the telecom and all the microwave dishes in Southern California. I could do my job because of food. That's not weakness. That's mercy. Your body found a way to keep you doing and going when nothing else would. But here's the cost, and it's a quiet, heartbreaking one. You can't numb just the hard parts. The same mercy that kept the grief in the corner also dimmed everything else. The joy got quieter. The pleasure got quieter. And the smallest, most important signals, the ones that say, I'm hungry, I'm full, this is what my body actually needs, those get turned down too. We didn't just lose the ability to feel the hard things. We lost the ability to feel, period. So many of us are sitting here genuinely unable to feel what we're feeling at all, let alone what our bodies were quietly asking for the whole time. I remember right after my divorce, like literally the day after I kicked the jerk out, I looked around and I'm like, what do I want? I have no idea. And the work, our beautiful work, isn't to rip the soothing away. It's to slowly bring in the things nature actually meant for it. A walk, a real conversation, a few minutes of quiet. Or if you're my neighbor at 4 a.m., a few minutes of me belting Whitney at full volume, which is my own personal front-loading joy, and I make no apologies. They've actually told me they'd appreciate it, so don't worry. I'm not a horrible person in my neighborhood. The point is, we don't take the comfort away. We widen what can provide it. I'm going to say that again. We don't take the comfort away. We widen what can provide it. I want to be honest about how big food's job has been because it was never only numbing. Food regulated us when we were dysregulated. It helped us dissociate from what we didn't have the tools or ability to face. It diverted us when a feeling got too close. It has been doing the work of a whole nervous system's worth of tools all by itself. Of course, it was hard to put down. It wasn't one crutch. It was all of them at once. Food is incredible. Whew. Okay, take a breath with me. I feel like I need to take a straw breathing. Okay. We've been looking at why we go to food. Now I'm going to turn and look at the thing that's been sold as the solution and show you why it's actually the trap. And I don't want you to get afraid here because I'm not trying to take away everything that has worked for you. I want to name the thing underneath the whole rigid framework, the belief it's built on, the one nobody likes to say out loud, but everybody's organized around. It's this: you can't trust yourself. Your appetite is broken. Your judgment around food can't be relied on. You can't trust yourself. So you need rules from outside to do the trusting for you. I want to be fair because there's a reason this is so seductive. When you've spent years feeling out of control around food, you can't trust yourself doesn't feel like an insult. It feels like a relief. Finally, someone's explaining the chaos and the rules feel like a rescue. I lived inside that relief for years. I want to name something the rigid plan quietly demands, though: perfection. The lines only work if you hold them exactly. But perfection isn't a thing a human life allows. SWCC, remember that? The stuff we can't control shows up every single time. The dog throws up on the rug at 6 a.m. The good one, not the bad one. Your teenager mentions at 9 p.m. the science project that's due tomorrow. The flight's delayed, and the only food in the terminal is a vending machine having an existential crisis, and it has been a day. The funeral, the deadline, the hard conversation you didn't see coming. Mercury's in retrograde all the time. Life does not check your meal plan before it happens to you. It just doesn't. And the moment the rigid line cracks against real life, it doesn't just break the line, it breaks you a little. Because the story you've been handed says the line breaking is your fault. You didn't plan well enough. You didn't have enough resources available to you. You didn't use your resources because the story you've been handed says the line breaking is your fault. So you spiral. I'm bad. I'm weak. Everyone else can do this. Why can't I? And none of that is true. You were holding an impossible standard against an uncontrollable life and called the inevitable collision a personal failing. Here's the other side of that same coin. Even if you do hold the line perfectly, something else pays for it. The energy and attention it takes to grip that hard has to come from somewhere. Your relationships, your work, your rest, your joy. Life is balance. It has to be. Good enough is a far healthier watchword than perfect. For every biological, psychological, and social reason there is, perfect was never on the menu. It was never supposed to be. But here's what we usually get backwards, and it matters more than almost anything else I say today. We think of the rigid plan as numbing. It isn't. The numbing came from the soothing food, the salve. The rigid plan takes that away. So on a rigid plan, you're not numbed, you're flooded. Every feeling the food used to tuck into the corner comes roaring back. And now look at everything the rigid plan is asking of you at the same time. Weigh it, measure it, time it, track it, resist it, hold the line through all of it. The stress and overwhelm of that is enormous, all on its own. The feelings were going to be loud the moment we stopped using food to quiet them, rigid plan or not. The rigidity just piles its own stress on top of the flood. And I promise you, I'm going to give you some information so that you help. Well, what do I do then, Sonja? I promise I will give you this information. Bear with me. The part that does the real damage. We are already, all of us, pretty terrible at reading our own bodies. Most humans are. We've never been taught how. We confuse anxiety with hunger, exhaustion with craving, sadness with emptiness. And then the rigid plan comes in and makes it worse. It tells you the hunger you feel is a lie, that your signals are false, designed to trip you up, that the right amount and the right food are whatever someone else decided, not what your body is saying. So you practice overriding your body every single day. You don't lose the hunger, you lose the ability to read it, to tell what it actually means. Not because your body failed, but because you were trained faithfully to stop listening. I am sensing some fear in the room, and I just want you to take a deep breath and relax because I have information that is going to really help you. The diet world points at that confusion and says, see, we told you that you couldn't trust yourself, but here's the sleight of hand. They created the confusion. I don't know that they did it intentionally, honestly. But the plan flooded you, disarmed you. I know you all feel this. I know you know what I'm talking about. It trained you out of hearing your own body. Literally trained you out of it. The neural pathways got quiet. The neural pathways to hearing your own body got quiet. And then they pointed, that doesn't mean they're gone, guys. I just want to say they're not gone, but they got quiet. And then they pointed at the very confusion they'd caused and called it proof you needed the rules all along. I'm not saying there's bad guys out there that are trying, there's no conspiracy theories here. Seriously. I've just lived this and I feel it and I worked with so many people and I understand it. So I hope this makes sense to you. So what about the structure itself? Was all of it wrong? No. Here's the honest part. Not having to decide every single moment, a little automaticity, that's genuinely helpful. Think of it like brushing your teeth. You don't relegate it you don't relitigate it every day. You don't weigh the pros and cons at the sink. You just do it. And that frees your mind for everything else. Automaticity, we understand that. Some things running on quiet rails is a gift. The error was never structure. The error was justifying it with a willpower gap that doesn't exist and building it as scaffolding around a body they told you couldn't hold itself up. Your body not being able to listen. You couldn't trust your body. So the scaffolding and the program was built out here. I'm hoping this visual makes sense to you. And expecting and insisting on perfection. This is what I can say now with my whole chest. Rigidity is just trading one prison for another. It swaps the chaos for a cage and calls the cage freedom, but it never once asks you why you went to food in the first place. It can't. It was never designed to. It's always the food. It's always your fault for eating the food. Nobody ever asked that underlying question. I'll be honest about something hard. The rigid way is, in a sense, the easier promise. There's a cute little formula in it. 8 weeks. 8 weeks to automaticity. Just follow the plan. The weight comes off. That's seductive precisely because it's tidy. And it worked for me. I did it. I lost the weight, but I had to figure out a different way to maintain. What I'm offering you is harder until it isn't. And it's the only thing that lasts. The courageous lifelong work, because stuff comes up all the time. Dig into the real reasons and heal them. Not in 8 weeks. Bird by bird, bit by bit. If you know anything about Anne Lamott, Ode to Anne Lamott. Bird by bird. Finding your solid floor one honest piece at a time. One honest piece at a time. Until the noise turns down so far that you barely recognize the person who used to stand at the freezer. I know, because that person was me. And an ode to, some of you might know what I mean by this, I am no longer a pickle. I'm not. Now, I want to name 3 traps inside the rigidity because if you're living in them, I want you to feel seen, not judged, seen. The first is the certainty trap. When you've lived in chaos around food for years, a rigid plan doesn't feel like a cage at first. It feels like the first solid ground you've ever stood on. Finally, rules. Finally, I know exactly what to do. The black and white feels like safety because the gray is where you always drowned. So you grip it hard because letting go feels like falling back into the water. That's not stupidity. That's a drowning person finding something solid and holding on for dear life. The second is the identity trap, and it's the hardest. At some point, the plan stops being something you do and becomes someone you are. I know this one from the inside because I lived it. I was a crystal vaser. I don't eat sugar and flour. And I'll be honest, I was proud of it. It was who I was. No, thank you. I don't eat that. Wasn't a choice I made. It was an identity I wore, and I wore it with pride. It made me special, disciplined, good, leading 17 Gideon games. But here's why that's the deepest trap. When the rules become your identity, letting them go or watching yourself smash them doesn't feel like changing your diet. It feels like losing yourself. Who am I if I'm not the person who doesn't eat sugar? That's not a food question. That's an existential one. And it's why so many of us cling to the rules long after they've stopped serving us, because you cannot just walk away from your own self. I still don't eat that stuff, by the way, but these days I prefer to focus on what I do eat. And I'll get into that soon. I promise. The third is the shame trap, the flip side for everyone who couldn't hold the line. If the rules are the only way to be good, then breaking them is proof you're bad. So every slip isn't a slip, it's evidence. See, I suck at this. I'll always be broken. I'll always be fat. But no human holds a perfect line against a real life. The rigidity gave you a pass-fail test you were always, eventually, going to fail, and then handed you the failure as proof of your brokenness. You weren't failing the plan. The plan was impossible, and then it blamed you for being human. And remember, even the people who don't visibly fail are paying for it somewhere else, because life is balance. There is no version of perfect that doesn't cost you. Good enough is not the consolation prize. It's the actual goal. And I want to be very, very clear here. I'm not talking about one particular program. I'm talking about all programs, all diets that are rigid and specific. That's what I'm talking about, and not a particular program. And I know there have been changes, and I know people are trying to morph through. I'm here to tell you I figured out some of these things, and they're sitting right here. And they're sitting in my heart, and I want to share them today. The cruelest part, the part that doesn't get named, how are you supposed to hold those rigid lines day after day against a life that won't cooperate? The plan gives you a vicious tool for that, your inner critic, the lacerating voice. You're weak, you blew it, you disgust me. Do better. God, I used to talk that way to myself. The rigid plan doesn't just tolerate that voice, it recruits it and puts it in charge of keeping you in line, literally in line. I have a really strong manager part who really like to go there. That voice isn't free. Every time it fires, your body answers. A flood of stress chemicals, cortisol, the whole alarm system lighting up over and over all day. Living under your own relentless attack keeps your body bathed in that stress, and the costs of that are real and they're physical. So the rigid plan doesn't just hurt your heart and your sense of yourself. It taxes your body with the very stress response that makes everything harder. Here's what gets me the most. That fierce, protective energy, the vigilance, the force, the whole arsenal, it's real and it's powerful, and it's aimed at exactly the wrong thing. It's pointed at policing yourself for having a bite, when the real work, the thing all that energy was meant for, is something else entirely. Keeping the substances that are genuinely poison to your body out of it. Making choices that nourish you. And when you don't, because you won't, none of us do it perfectly. Pausing, reflecting, getting curious about why you reached, instead of attacking yourself and drowning in regret. That pause, that curiosity, that gentleness and compassion toward your own reasons, that's the actual work. And the rigid plan with all its good girl line holding shields you from ever doing it. The self-policing looks diligent. It's actually the thing standing between you and the real healing. This part gets missed. Everywhere else in your life, you're told healing comes through self-compassion. Be gentle, be kind. And then this one area hands you the opposite instruction. That the only way to be good is to turn your harshest voice on yourself and never let up. Those two things cannot live in the same body. You weren't failing. You were caught between two instructions that could never both be true. That voice was never yours. It was the job the rigidity handed you, and you get to give it back. And point all that good, fierce energy where it actually belongs. certainty, identity, or shame. Did you fall into any of those? I certainly did. Underneath all three is the question that keeps everyone stuck. If not this, then what? If I'm not gripping the rules, not the crystal vaser, not white knuckling the plan, what's left? Won't I just fall back into the water? No, because it was never rigid rules or chaos. It was never cage or the flood. There's a third thing, and it's the whole of my work. And I'll show it to you in a moment, but first I want, because I'm never, it's like a detective novel. They're never going to tell you who did it. But first I want you to hear the most important thing. You already have it. Let me bring us back to why we're here, because I told you I felt two things when I found all this out about the willpower gap, and I want to name them both. I felt validated, finally proof that I was never broken, that there were real reasons all along. And I felt betrayed, that the thing which set me free was something they'd known was incomplete and kept selling it anyway. This is the entire diet industry, guys. Both are true. You might feel both today too. So let me give you the science underneath all of this plainly, because understanding it is what turns the betrayal into freedom. Willpower is real, but the tank was always folklore. Here's what's actually happening when you reach and can't stop, and especially at night when so many of these forces pile up at once. Manufactured substances, the engineered ones, the ones that your husband brings home and hides in the cupboard, are built to override the signals that tell you you've had enough. That's design, not weakness. They pay people big bucks. Stress takes the thinking part of your brain offline. So the evening collapse isn't your character giving out, it's a nervous system that's carried a full day. Evening itself is a real convergence. Your body's natural rhythm, the whole day's accumulated load, and any deficit you ran during the day. Circadian rhythm, look it up. I can share it with you. All arriving at once at the exact hour you have the least left. It can hit any time of day, but evening is where it stacks itself. And the one that ties it all together, restriction itself, manufactures the rebound. The grip doesn't prevent the fall. The grip builds the cliff. Think about what that's actually asking of you, to live your whole life 1 foot from the ditch, every single day, braced and white-knuckled at the edge. Is that really a healthy way to walk through your own precious life? This is why it's Monday, I'm starting fresh. Feels so good. That exhilaration is real. The problem was never that you didn't mean it. It's that the effects don't last, and you were taught to read that as your failure instead of the plan's design. And what the research shows, what you believe shapes what happens. If you believe one bite is a landslide, that belief helps make it one. So the way out was never a tighter grip, it's understanding. So if not the rigid plan, then what? Here's the part I most want you to hear, and it changes what comes next. You already have a floor. And let me say plainly what I mean by the floor, because it's easy to wave a word like that around. The floor is your own restored ability to discern, to tell the difference between hunger and anxiety, between fullness and fear, between what your body actually needs and the noise of a hard day. It's self-trust grounded in being able to read yourself honestly. You were born to be able to do this. You didn't lose the floor. You lost the ability to feel it under you. Because for years, decades for me, the signals got numbed or drowned out or overridden until you couldn't tell anxiety from excitement or real hunger from boredom or exhaustion or loneliness. The floor was always there. You just lost your footing on it. It's like Dorothy at the end of Oz. She had the power to go home the whole time. She just had to learn it was already hers. That's you. And it just brings me to a warm and fuzzy spot to think of that part of the movie. The thing you need was never outside you in someone else's plan. It's learning what to read what was always yours. So let me name the thing under the word diet because it trips everyone up. Everyone is on a diet. Whatever you consume is your diet. I'm not anti-diet, I'm anti-rigidity. Eating in a way that genuinely nourishes you isn't rigid. What's rigid is the wall of rules around it, weighing and measuring every bite. Telling yourself you can eat only these foods and only this amount and only at this hour. No taste, no exception, no listening. The food was never the problem, though, guys. The rules wrapped around the food are. So when I say drop the rigidity, I'm not saying stop caring for your body. I could never, I don't want to bash specific programs, but I could never understand the concept of just eating whatever I felt like doing in the moment. I'm not saying we need to give our body what it actually needs. There are some reasons my body wants to grab for that Twinkie. Gross. Most of us numb for years. I numb for decades. And when you numb that long, you never get to practice feeling. You build no muscle for it. So when the substance goes and the feelings finally come back, they don't come back gently. They come back all at once, a whole backlog with no training, no practice, nothing to build up to help you carry them. We call that, I can't handle my emotions. It was never that you couldn't. You were never given practice. That's not a character flaw. It's a skill you didn't get to build yet. And skills can be built. In a lot of ways, you might as well be a toddler at this. It's all new, and that's not shameful. It's just early. You get to learn it now. I want to tell you about my friend Jennifer. Many of you know Jennifer. Oh, dear, dear, dear Jennifer. And she's given me permission and her blessing to share this. Jennifer flourished under rigid lines. She loved them. She knew exactly what to do, and she did it. And she flourished. And then her body forced her out. A Crohn's flare meant she had to go on a soft diet, completely outside the rules she trusted. She was terrified. She was stacking weight on, eating the only thing she could keep down, crying to me on the phone even, literally about whether blending her food instead of chewing it meant she was failing. Ugh. I remember that call, Jennifer. And here's what she'll tell you now. She believes she didn't regain the way she feared, the way she'd watched others regain, precisely because she was forced out of the rigidity early and had to learn to trust herself. The thing she was most afraid of became the thing that saved her. I had my own version. For a year, I forced myself to eat grains at breakfast because the plan said so. And they were quietly messing with my system the whole time. I struggled to digest raw vegetables. God bless my sweet body. And found the only way that worked for me was green smoothies. I'm going to say smoothies again because I get like crazy looks from people when I say drink smoothies. It was really helpful to my sweet body, and I still want to get those vegetables in. I only found that out by finally listening to my body instead of the rules. These are two true stories, and I have many. The rules can override the very signals that keep you safe. Has your body ever made you break a food rule and something unexpected happened? Curious. So there's a distinction that I want to name because I think you've already lived it. There's food, and there's what I call NF, not food. Not my food. No, not food. Because it isn't the manufactured, engineered stuff that isn't really food for any of our bodies. And then for each of us, our own list. For me, it's gluten, dairy, a few others my body made very clear it couldn't use. That's NF to me. Here's what I want you to know. That wasn't in your head, and it wasn't weakness. There are serious researchers now finally with validated tools that we instinctively knew, showing that ultra-processed engineered substances can set off an addictive-like process in the brain. I still hate that they're calling it addictive-like. Ugh. Not all food, not you being dramatic. The manufactured stuff was built to override you. So when you couldn't stop, that was real. You were up against something designed to be hard to stop. And let me show you what listening to your own body actually looks like, because it's the opposite of a fear-based rule. Gluten isn't on anyone's list of bad foods, just the opposite. It's listed as a healthy choice, a good option, right there on every chart. For most people, it's genuinely fine. But my body had been shouting at me for years, my joints literally screaming that it was poison to me. And I'm grateful every single day that it finally shouted loud enough that I had to listen. That's not me fearing a bad food. That's me heeding my own body's data about a food the whole world calls healthy. Because good for people and good for you are not the same sentence. The chart doesn't know your body. Only you know your body. And it has been trying to tell you the whole time. Here's the distinction that sets you free, I hope. I hope. And it's the opposite of rigidity. Think about how recovery works for alcohol. Someone can release alcohol completely. They still drink tea and coffee and water, right? Letting go of the one thing that genuinely harms you doesn't mean you stop drinking. It means you stop drinking the poison. That's not a rigid rule, that's discernment. It's the same with food and not food. I release the engineered substances that are poison to me. And I still eat whole foods. Protein powder, yes, I do. Green smoothies, yes, I do. The things that actually serve this body. Releasing the NF isn't starvation or restriction, it's the opposite. It's finally feeding yourself what works and setting down what never did. And remember the willpower gap? The false idea that you had a hole where your self-control could be? This is the honest version of what was actually true. It was never a gap in you. It was a substance engineered to override anyone. That's why people built rigid scaffolding around it. And automaticity isn't wrong, but you don't build scaffolding around a body you've decided is broken. You build a solid floor. And for the things that genuinely don't serve you, that floor is a sacred boundary. One you choose because your body told you the truth and you're finally listening. Same action as a rigid rule, but completely different feeling. One is a rule imposed on you from outside in fear. The other is you finally heard. I hope there are a few ding, ding, dings going off. I need to separate three things that feel completely identical in the moment because untangling them is a big piece of the work. One is the fear of regaining. That's earned. That's wisdom. I will never argue you out of it, and I won't try. We have so much history, every one of us, that taught us to fear it. I'm pretty sure I lost and gained 1,000 pounds in my lifetime. Number two is the belief that one deviation collapses everything, the Grand Canyon of ditches. That one is installed. It's not true. It's impossible. Physics. But it is self-fulfilling. It's the belief that turns one bite into a landslide, not the bite itself. And three, knowing that for you, one bite genuinely doesn't stop. I'm pretty confident that NF out there can't enter my body for multiple reasons. But there's no satiety. That's not fear. That's healthy respect. I would continue eating. I'm certain of it. I would continue eating and eating and eating. Maybe. I have a healthy respect for not putting those substances in my body. It took me years to move from abject fear of those substances to a steady, clear respect. Those are NF for me. Not forbidden in panic, just genuinely not for me. I know where this goes for me. That is a completely different thing from the abject fear that one almond means everything comes roaring back. And here's what's underneath the grip for so many of us. Here's what's underneath the grip for so many of us. It isn't only about the weight. Holding the rules tightly also keeps the lid on everything we've numbed. Letting go of the grip means we get to feel it. That's why loosening is so frightening. It was never just about the food. So the grip was never what kept you safe. Understanding is, because you can't be ambushed by something you can see coming. And there's a piece of that I have to share because it's the heart of a whole chapter in my book, chapter 3 of this book. Your brain learns the same way for everything. A language, driving a car, your whole career. It learns by paying attention, making real choices, hitting a little friction, and reflecting on what worked. Focus, friction, reflection, and then meaningful repetition. That's how new pathways form. That's how healing happens. And a rigid plan strips all of that away. You're not deciding, you're not discerning, you're just complying on autopilot. Frankly, it's why when someone comes to me, well, I was so good for 2 years and now you didn't learn anything new. You maybe learned some good habits, which is exactly why you can follow a plan perfectly for months and then have it fall apart the moment your guard drops. Nothing actually got rewired. You were using willpower to override the old pattern, not building a new one. And the moment the willpower runs low, the old pattern is right there waiting. That's not your failure. That's what happens when a method skips the very conditions your brain needs to learn. Here's the part I love. The same brilliant brain that mastered everything else in your life, your work, your relationships, every hard thing you ever figured out, that brain was never the problem. It was handed a method that switched its learning off. Choosing, noticing, reflecting, that's how the change finally sticks. Not the rigid rules, the opposite of them. It just flashed on a piece of advice I hear often: tomorrow's another day. It's hard to look back on an error if you see it as one. It's hard to look back and reflect, but that's what you need to do to learn. When you're driving a car for the first time and you barely miss something or you forget to do something, you reflect back on it so it doesn't happen again. That's learning. If tomorrow's another day, if that's your answer, you're not learning about what happened. It's a huge waste. It's a huge waste. Don't do that. Think about what happened. Think about why it happened, and think about what's underneath it and how you could maybe shift it. We've named a lot of hard things today. Now I want to give you the other side, the part that actually heals it. So I understand if understanding is what helps keep you safe, what actually heals it? Because understanding alone, sitting by yourself with a head full of good information, isn't quite enough. I know, because I tried that for years. The thing that heals is resonance. I mean something specific. Resonance is what happens when another person is truly with you in what you're feeling. Not fixing it, not advising, not cheering you up. When they do that, they're actually telling you they don't like where you are, telling you it's not okay to be in that sadness or that grief or that sorrow. They're telling you it's not okay for them. And they want you out of it. They want you moving past it. Resonance is what happens when another person is truly with you in what you're feeling. Not fixing it, not advising, not cheering you up. Just attuned, present, getting it. Feeling it with you. That's not always easy to do. As a resonance queen, that is not always easy to sit with someone who's in pain. But allowing you to feel valid for having that feeling. Most of us have almost never had that. And our nervous systems are starving for it. And it's crazy how quickly we relax once we have heard and been seen and accompanied. Oh, it's crazy. You can see their shoulders fall and relax. You can see their jaw unclench. You can see them breathe again. Here's why it matters so much, and it's not soft. It's biology. You remember alarmed aloneness, that danger signal of going through hard things unaccompanied, which just happens all the time, especially for people that are embarrassed and isolating with food? Resonance is the exact antidote. When you're truly met by another person, your nervous system gets the message it was desperate for. I'm not alone in this. And the cost of everything drops. The feeling you couldn't hold alone becomes holdable when someone holds it with you. That's not a metaphor. That's how human regulation works. We were never designed to do it by ourselves, which is why food was never really the problem and willpower was never the answer. Food was standing in for the accompaniment we didn't have. And the healing isn't a better set of rules to white knuckle alone in your kitchen. It's being accompanied by me, by this community, by people who can be with you in it. And eventually, most preciously, by yourself, your own steady company, until you learn you were never as alone as it felt. That's the whole thing. You were never broken. You were biological, a nervous system reaching for connection and finding food when there was no one there. There is not a single person here who doesn't understand what I'm talking about. I'm certain of it. The work is making sure there's someone there, even if it's only you, and that's not an only, because that means you're doing the work. I'm not going to hand you a toolkit today, although I have many tools. The actual how, the daily practice, the way through, that's its own work. I recommend watching this space for more coming and what's already here. But I'll give you one question to carry into the kitchen at 9 at night when I'm not there, though I hope by then someone is. Maybe it's you. Just ask, is it really true? Did I actually blow everything? Or did I have one moment? Is it really true that I need this substance? What do I really need? Put it on a sticky note. Then your prefrontal cortex will grab a hold of it before your amygdala gets too crazy. Okay, now that you've seen the whole picture, let me tell you where I've landed. I try not to live in regret about any of it. What's the point? I did the best I could with what I knew, and now I know more. That's just how it goes for all of us. So I look back at the woman standing at the freezer with a lot of tenderness, and I look at you with a lot of hope. And I still think food is one of the greatest gifts we've got. It's like an early warning light on the dashboard, telling you something under the hood needs a look. It's honestly my delight to help you figure out what. And I'll tell you how I know the floor holds, because I've stood on it when everything else gave way. I was a yo-yo dieter my whole life, a lifetime of losing the weight and finding it again, over and over and over again. I lived in that cycle and in the fear that ran it. I don't anymore. For many years now, I've kept a sacred boundary around the substances that genuinely harmed me. Chosen, not white-knuckled. And in those years, there was a season my parents were dying and I was caring for both of them. They've been divorced for 50 years, guys. Just think about that one. They weren't in the same house, thank God. Maybe. That was challenging in itself. I gained some weight then. This was only a few years ago. Not all of it, not even close, but some. If you look back on my videos, you can tell. But here's the thing. In my old life, that would have derailed me completely. Oh my God, I'm doing this for a living. Oh my God. Would have sent me spiraling in fear. It didn't. I was clear. Even under all that weight of grief, I would not go back to what was poison to me. I didn't. And I let the food not be the first thing, or the second or the third even, because my parents were dying and that was right. And then when things settled, partly because I hadn't panicked about the weight, I'm certain of that, and partly because life without the chaos felt so much easier, I watched myself gently make lighter choices. Ask the question, am I hungry? Am I full? Just imagine looking at the bowl in front of you and deciding when you're done, not by the how little is left. What do I need right now? There has not been a single day that I've eaten the same thing, and I've lost weight. It released me from its little sweet little stress grip. I honestly don't know how much I'd gained, and I don't care. And that not caring is the freedom. That I don't expect everyone to not care what the scale says. But that's not abject fear anymore. That's healthy respect. I want to say something to anyone here looking back at your rigid years. You were not foolish. You could have been. How could you have known? Nearly every one of us was handed exactly one story about how this works. I mean, I think the diet, I don't know, when did the diet industry start? I know my first play at it was in the uh, mid to late 60s, maybe early 70s with Weight Watchers. I don't remember. I was very young. I can't even count the number of diets I've been on. There's one way to lose weight. Go on a diet. Follow it perfectly, hold the line, and it'll work. That's what I thought. That's the only map the world ever gave us. So, of course, we went rigid. We were doing the only thing anyone ever showed us. We certainly didn't hear any conversations about the underlying reasons we go to food. The rigidity is the very thing that made it so hard to sustain, but no one told us that. We just kept shouldering the blame for years for a plan that was never going to hold. So how else should you have walked? You walked the only road there was. I didn't know the damage rigidity could do. You didn't either. That's not a confession and it's not an accusation. It just is. We were both doing the very best we could with what we had. And here's what I want you to feel about what comes next, because the biggest fear is always the unknown. This isn't a leap into chaos, guys. It's the opposite. It's quiet. It's peace. It's the noise turning down in bold and beautiful ways. So much so that for many of you, things you've struggled with for years start to ease. For most of you, the rigid way never actually worked, or you wouldn't be here today. Something has been off and you've sensed it for a long time. You just kept blaming yourself instead of the map. You may not believe me yet, and you don't have to. Take your time. Sit with all of this. Watch this again. Gather your mastermind group and see if they have the same questions you do. Go deeper in the work. Come back and ask your questions. And in the quiet spaces, you might find this is the truth. A complicated, yes, gentle, hopefully freeing, absolutely truth. You don't have to be done anything perfectly here. You just have to get to know what you know now and do it with whatever you're ready for. You don't have to do it alone. That's not a small thing. That's everything. I would say right now, if you have a plan that works for you, continue on, but open the door to looking deeper. Open the door to understanding the pull, understanding the need, asking a simple question. Is this really true? Okay. First promoted diet was 1863. Thank you, Madison. Awesome. Excellent. Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Let me see if there's any questions in here. You guys are just wonderful. Thank you for the comments. SWCC stuff we can't control. It's my little, I don't even know what the word is when you use letters to mean something. Are there any questions? Does this make sense? I'm going to go on gallery so I can see you guys. Does this make sense to you guys? Was it a lot? Did I just flood your little brain this morning? And I don't mean that sarcastically at all. With stuff this morning, it's a lot. It's a lot. And frankly, I have been consumed with it since I found out the science that willpower actually was not a finite resource. That just blew my sweet little head out the door. And then just this week, I was working on the concept that I've always had, the struggle I've always had with the idea of rigidity and someone else telling me how much and when I'm supposed to eat. Even though we can make those changes, I understand that. But the idea of the scaffolding outside of us that was necessary because we couldn't hold it inside, that was a struggle. I need to be able to have a different relationship with my food. And that's what I've worked on this whole thing, thinking outside the box, this book, and everything else that I do. Any questions? I just smashed you 6 ways to Sunday, and now you're probably not even able to think.
Sonja,
Mm-hmm.
can you repeat really quick? I mean, I know it was simple, but I didn't write it down. Like if you're walking to the pantry, like one question to ask yourself.
Yeah, you can ask several. Is this true? But my favorite is this really true?
Is this
That's
really
my
true?
favorite. That's my favorite because it covers a big piece of the reason we're walking into the kitchen. We think we need that food. We think we need that substance. I like to have a sticky note around because the sticky note literally does two things. First of all, we read it, which means we're pulling into our prefrontal cortex and we're pulling out of our trigger space. So the sticky note helps an awful lot. And then the pause itself is also neurologically based because it gives you space and time to make a different choice. You don't have to make a different choice, but that space and time starts you down the road of literally making a different choice and sitting with it for a moment. Is this really true? What do I really need right now is another fun one. What do I really need? That's another fun.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You have a question, Dee?
I do. You know, Sonja, I just find this all very fascinating and I find it very unsettling
Yes.
and scary.
Yes.
Because the mindset that you are debunking and have learned about has been like my rock, my foundation.
Yep.
And, you know, so I think of that old like, well, if it's working, why do I need to change it? It's working. You know, and a lot of my stuff originated way in the back in the day from a 12-step program and then just carried on into the next program. But it's like there's a lot of fear there and unsettling of I'm gonna just be blunt. How can I trust myself? I and maybe I don't want to
Oh,
trust my.
so let me just offer something. First of all, you don't need to change anything, but you can start asking questions of yourself and your body, which is something that we have stopped doing. I need people to understand that food was the solution for all of the issues that were out there, and we can find different solutions. So, regardless of whether or not your structured plan is working for you, Dee, I don't want you to change a thing. But what I do want you to do is start looking at the things that send you sideways, that make it harder for you to stick to your rigid plan, that send you into a tizzy. You're retiring when? In 2 days or something ridiculous, right?
um, July 17th.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
The rigid program may very well be serving you beautifully. I don't want you to change a thing about that, but what I do want you to do is to start looking at the underlying reasons that you go to food, so that on July 12th or whatever you just said, because it just went right out of my head, on that day, you're going to recognize that there might be some things, and you could maybe even, oh, I don't know, plan for them and recognize that this might make your food seeking easier, might make it calmer, might make it more relaxed, might make it even unnecessary. That food noise, the cravings, all of the reasons that you are all here today are the things that we want to work on to turn down. I'm telling you that the rigid food plan itself tells you not to trust yourself and to stop listening. I want you to start listening. You can still take on that beautiful plan if it works for you. Absolutely. I want you to start listening so that it is easier, because the only reason you're going to food is because we've stopped listening to our bodies, and or we're using this structure outside to keep us sane and maybe keep us thin. But it has nothing to do with getting to the underlying causes.
I just want to thank you so much for this workshop. It it was mind blowing, like I said in the chat. And it was a couple of weeks ago when you introduced it on that other workshop. And my other thought too is like I I honestly was on, and I'm just gonna say it because I don't have anything to hide. I was honestly on a Bright Line Eating meetup last Sunday, which is an unofficial group. And it's not supported by Bright Line Eating, the organization. And we were reading the new book, and I was on there just touting how much the willpower tank and depletion was my saving goal. And then that might have been 2 weeks ago. And then, I heard you explain this in the workshop about our what our true weight should be. And then again today, and I'm like, I want to go back on there and say, okay, I'm retracting my words, but I don't have all the background or anything, but as to explain why, but to just say, I am rethinking that whole belief. And do
And
I
I
even
want you
need
to
to?
hear, I want
You
you to
know,
hear, Dee. Here's the thing. I have no problem with people talking about willpower depletion, because in a sense we get exhausted and our willpower is depleted. In a sense, it's a logical thing. The problem I've always had is with the idea that the structure is the savior. The
right.
solution to the problem is not the structure. The structure, I suppose, gives us a pause and gives us a. For me, it was a huge relief when I found it. Not only did it help me with abstinence and the concept, but it also gave me this huge, overwhelming peace. It also gave me health back. I no longer had type 2 diabetes and high cholesterol. There were a number of really, really great things. It taught me about the value of vegetables. It taught me a bunch of things. I do not want to vilify any of this. I need people to hear, though, that the world will be a lot easier. The world will be a lot brighter when you start noticing the reasons that you want food. Even if you stick to that plan, whatever the plan is, whatever you've created for yourself, because there's also the concept of making changes. Even if you stick to that plan, There are going to be times when it is impossible or really hard. And those are the times in particular, I'd rather you not wait for that. But those are the times in particular that you want to look at the underlying stuff. This is not about saying no to a rigid plan. No, I'm not ever going to say that. I just want you to walk in consciously and look at this thing, because this is not easy stuff. Looking at the reasons you go to food might open up cracks in your childhood that you never wanted to revisit. It might open up what you consider to be your inability to say no to anybody. Maybe you hate confrontation. Maybe you're an Uber caregiver because you can't handle anybody thinking you're not worth anything. Those are the things underlying when we constantly are talking to ourselves in these horrible ways. Oh. I remember the first time I thought something in my head and I said it out loud. I was embarrassed. I was upset. I was mad at myself for the way that I talk. But it's a standard process in our heads to keep us in community, to keep us safe, to keep us alive. Our brains are not here to make us happy. Our brains are here to keep us alive. And what we get to do as sentient beings is figure out the underlying reasons. We have to be able to feel. And it can be very scary. There's a bunch of people here that are regulars on the magic. We talk about all sorts of stuff and almost never talk about food. But everyone on that screen is working on their plan, working on their health, working on their weight, working on all sorts of things. But they understand that the underlying stuff is what really needs to be, and we need to be accompanied. I got really, really righteously indignant when I found this science out a couple weeks ago. I'm telling you, I was angry. But the more that I looked at it, the more I realized I really didn't. And that's why I looked at my book again, just to make sure. I wanted to look at my book and make sure that I wasn't basing my book science on this bad science that had been debunked 20 years ago. Okay? I wanted to make sure I wasn't. And frankly, I don't know someone that's been living in the diet world and coming up with a beautiful reason why we should have a diet. Great. That there's probably a reason why this particular structure was suggested in this way, but it's using bad science. So I started to get upset. And the more upset I got, the more I realized, you know what? I can get righteously indignant. I can. But I can look at this thing as an opportunity. I learned a lot of valuable things from this healthy way of eating. And I had to morph because my body and Sweet Jennifer, I don't know if she's still on, my body and my Sweet Jennifer's both required changes. And I'm pretty confident every one of your bodies is screaming, please make a change somehow. I'm sure of it. That being said, that's just on the food plan. And it's being touted as the solution, and it's not. The solutions are work, and there's many of them. Many. And God bless SWCC, because it'll keep coming. It'll keep coming. The more confidence you can have in yourself and your ability to handle SWCC, that's a skill. I'm going to take another straw breath. This one is really great. It expands your heart rate variability in a really, really great way. You might be asking, well, what am I supposed to do now, Sonja? I am not suggesting that you give up or change anything. But if you're having a problem or you're struggling with where you are right now, work on that. Maybe make one change. Maybe make one shift. Think about the alcoholic who gives up alcohol but keeps drinking his tea or his coffee or whatever other crap they have at those meetings. Think about that. Something's really messing with your head. Get it out of your body. It doesn't belong there. Each one of us is different and in a different place, and that's why I started it out that way. We each have a different reason and a different problem and a different issue, but they're all related around food. Have an absolutely fabulous day. I really want you to. If you'd share a glimmer with me, I would love it. My favorite up here, which is probably not happening right now because it's hot and sunny, are banana slugs walking across my path. Those are my favorite. I don't see them very much in the summertime, but send me a glimmer. Love to see it.
What's the glimmer again?
The opposite of a trigger. A glimmer is something
Oh,
delightful.
right.
Something delightful. Send me a glimmer. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Please. This is really my heart work, and I would really love for you to hopefully get your questions answered, because the last thing I want to do is make more stress and pressure and put more stuff on you. That's the last thing I want to do.
Can I testify to that?
Yes.
Get that. I will send her a text about like a food thing, or why do they say this and why does my doctor say that, just to get her opinion. You don't have to take it. But she'll be completely honest, because I'm not in her paid program. So I'm thinking, why would she help me? She's not getting anything off of me, because that's my protective brain. You know that, because why would you be my friend for no reason, right? You want something, right? So, and she truly, I think Sonja truly, she cares, like, because like I said, she doesn't get anything from me, but I truly, she's the one I would like text at whatever stupid time, because she doesn't have to answer me at that time, and I'm okay. So, so she is sincere, because I'm really skeptical about everyone's always trying to sell you something. So, I do believe that about Sonja.
Well, I'm really clear. The only reason I've been pointing at my book all this time is because it contains all the stuff that might help you. But I will say this, there are a lot of things that I could sell you, and I didn't want to today. I did not want to, because I really, really felt this was just the biggest PSA I could give out. That's what I wanted to give today. And I also wanted to thank Catherine for being my co-host. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. Have a fabulous day, everyone. Please. There may be things that come up for you. You will get a recording of this, and I promise a deep dive into the science and the underlying stuff. Promise. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Sonja.
Bye-bye.
Bye.